Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 with Black Ice, and of course we're playing as Germany. Now you've just missed about an hour's discussion we had on humanity. Oh, it's nuclear. Okay. Which can be seen on Twitch. So good reason to kind of join our Saturday morning shows where we talk a lot of stuff and interact with each other. And that's what I really like about our live streams as opposed to just making YouTube videos, which I do also and enjoy that as well. But having sort of both happen is good. Very good. And again, what is it? I don't know how to. Is it Chijonak? Chijonok? Oh boy, I'm butchering your name, I'm sure. Okay. Defense works. Industrial works. Civilian works. Weekly stability up. Construction speed up 4%. Let's do construction speed up 4% first. And I'm just going to call you Chi John. I hope that isn't too much of an insult. Point about Germans living in Transylvania. The Wilsonian plan and Wilson was a racist. The U.S. Armed Forces had largely, not entirely, but largely integrated the blacks into it. Not entirely, but largely. He resegregates the armed forces, but he is a professor who also has a very low college professor, has a very low opinion of women and women's capabilities, but he is heralded as a modern day Democratic hero to this day. And I know why, because Democrats are identitarians. They believe in identity is the most important thing. What your gender is or what your skin color is. Now they want to try to think they're trying to build some sort of utopia, but they do care about gender and racial identities a whole lot. So they sort of agree with Wilson privately. But Wilson has all these views, and so he is a well-educated man and does understand some of this, but doesn't, I don't think, quite understand just how ethnically mixed a lot of these countries are, and the idea of making sensible boundaries out of some of these territories. Because Wilson, one of his points, and no, I'm not going to go into all of them, but one of his points is local self-determination for no, we're not going to go out experimental rockets for various peoples, and it just doesn't work out. We're going to do that, I think. Well, because you can't just divide up the world based upon. Yes, he did screen Birth of a Nation, and it is a racist movie. It's been many years. It was screened for me in one of my film history courses, and this is back in the day when college was meant to challenge your ideas, and it was definitely presented as a racist film and acknowledged as such, but it was not hidden from viewing by students. And you could look at it as a historical type movie explaining the past, which would be a good one that explains the past, but does have some minor racist overtones, would be, and I would say minor, because they're looking at what the past was like, would be the movie Gone with the Wind. Some of the black characters are very sensible, and some of them are not very sensible in Gone with the Wind. But I think, as much as anything else, they're acknowledging the lack of education of the slaves, because their blacks are presented as slaves in Gone with the Wind, and they were slaves, and so they weren't well educated. So they weren't, and some of them were sensible, but they weren't well informed about the world and the way things work. That's just the reality of America, the Civil War. So it's not so much whether it's right or wrong, it's just what was. And so I would say, from my understanding, and it's been many years since I've seen The Birth of a Nation, so I can't really comment on it intelligently, but I do understand, vaguely remember it, that it was rather racist, and not just talking about a racist past. So yeah. Okay, Chinese weapons deal. Send China equipment shipments. Okay. Well, we can talk a little bit about this. And this sort of, on my Discord server with Ari and a few others, we were chatting about this yesterday. World War I ends. We talked earlier in the live stream, I don't know if it got recorded for one of the episodes, we talked about World War I and how Japan jumps into World War I to pick up these territories. This obviously this was German territory, ends up being sort of under Britain / Australia kind of influence, but these islands out here were mostly, let me see if I can actually click on them, had been part of German colonies. Germany, late in the game, the Kaiser, now that Germany's unified, wants to be an empire, wants to be, let me rephrase it, wants to be a great power. Great powers appear to have colonies. America, and this is starting before the war, the Spanish-American War, and before they get Hawaii, doesn't have overseas colonies. They do have Alaska, but this is just seen as, colonial expansion here. So, they see Italy has, parts of northern, Africa. France has a bunch of territories around the world. Of course, Britain's everywhere and whatnot. So they want to be a great power alongside them. So they think they must get colonies. Well, outside of some diamond mines, Southwest Africa, at least in the 19th century, isn't really worth much. Tanganyika is worth a bit more, but it's somewhat plagued with, tropical diseases and such, so it's not. Britain's already picked off Zanzibar as partially to get rid of primarily, shall we say, to get rid of the slave trade that was happening, the Arab slave trade that was happening, Arabs trading in black Africans, slave trade. Picked off the island and kept it as a strategic possession. But so Germany wants to pick up that, and they sort of Cameroon is god awful territory. So yeah, and they also pick up what is it, like this little bit, or it's more over some little sliver of territory, Togo here, wherever Togo is, I don't know. It's right in here somewhere. To become a great power, thinks they need to pick up some, I know we'll get to this Chinese deal, pick up some remainder territory, and so they pick up some economically basically worthless items out here, but are sort of strategic actually for Japan and possibly other powers. But so they jump into the war. China, of course, would like to get back some territorial concessions, but sort of all things are forgiven, at least by the Chinese and more or less by the Germans after World War I, for what happened in China. And to this day, there's still a bit of, I think it is near Qingdao here, there's still a sort of preserved German former colony. Now, I don't think there's many Germans living there, but the architecture, the buildings are still there. They still build some new buildings in sort of the 19th century German style, I think. Trying to keep this sort of weird, set in the past colonial thing, but it's sort of like a historical Disneyland kind of thing to some degree, but that's overstating it. So they still sort of have this warm and friendly feeling towards Germans. So after World War One, you have a combination of, German officers winning employment. Now a lot of them fight in various aspects and various fashions in the Russian Civil War and other breakup wars there. But a bunch come out to China, and the German government does want to sort of keep its foot in the practice. So they send out German military missions because the Chinese do realize that, yeah, Germany loses the war, but loses it primarily strategically, not because they didn't fight well. So there's a real emphasis on getting German training for some elite divisions within China. And there's, especially once Hitler's in power and the Germans are producing, during the 1920s, not the 1930s, but the 1920s, China is under an arms embargo for military weapons. They can bring in civilian weapons like pistols, but military weapons, no. Later on, that goes away. And so they're looking to buy foreign weaponry. Germany is looking to sell some foreign weaponry and, have this ongoing training mission in China. So they sell Panzer I tanks and other equipment, aircraft to China. And so there's, by the 30s, much of the Chinese Civil War is done with, though. There's warlords, there's still the communists. It's still sort of a place to practice with your modern military toys a bit. So now this is, of course, a picture of communists, and I don't know what the hell really this is exactly, because that's a Russian DP machine gun there. But so this is an appropriate picture. So Germany sells a lot, or a fair number of weapons and equipment and training practices to China, which only really stops once the Chinese go to war with Japan. Just reading the chat here. No, Coca-Cola. They couldn't get any more of the Coke because the war breaks out. The U.S. stopped sending the syrup to Germany to bottle. See, the Coca-Cola company makes the Coca-Cola syrup that is either, again, this is long before I was born. And I know this best in America. There's a few. Moxie is still, I don't know if you know what Moxie is, but Moxie is still supposedly made in America. I've never had it, but it was a famous drink, a Coke-like drink. But obviously the two or three main, Coke and Pepsi, but there's still RC Cola and several other things. Soda fountains come about in the late 19th century as a medicinal practice, as a medicine. So and they were often associated with drugstores. So sodas was thought to be a health drink. Cokes, Coca-Cola, whatever you want to say. And so they would generally get their syrup shipped into them as a syrup, and then they would mix it with water and carbonate it as you made it to, put it into the glass, and people would drink it. And it was very much done as a health drink, a health cure, in America at least. There's a lot of advertisement going on. So when you drink Coca-Cola, you're drinking a health drink. Now, of course, most modern health nuts would entirely disagree with you, but what do they know? They're just the current fad, and the old fad is that. So that was the situation. Well, not everyone can get to or wants to go to the soda fountain to get a soda. So they bottle it. They put it in a bottle, and it holds its, carbonation and whatnot. And so bottling is the sort of critical element there. Well, the Coke plant in Germany can't get any more Coke syrup coming in, and they don't have the formula plus Coke, because Coke is very secretive about its formula. So is Pepsi. Very, very secret about what the actual formula is. They can't get any more Coke coming in, and you have this bottling plant that bottles soda. And so Fanta is the Germans trying to come up with using locally available, locally sourced, not imported from overseas materials, cola from Latin America or other sorts of flavors, something that can be locally produced, to bottle a soda type drink. And they come up with some of the Fanta flavors during World War II because they literally can't get the Coca-Cola. Well, people, I don't know if they thought it would cure cancer, but they thought it would be healthy to drink. I like Coke better because it's a bit sweeter. But that is... I drink Pepsi too. I probably drink 2/3 Coke, 1/3 Pepsi overall. But yeah, I drink both. So yeah, and that's sort of the story of Fanta. And Fanta, of course, continues to this day. Okay. Well, we've been building more military factories, and we've yet to be able to actually build a synthetic rubber factory. Okay, we have plenty of available steel, so I don't need to build more steel factories at the moment. Things could change. And we have more. We are slowly filling up our fuel reserves. It looks like we have more fuel than we need, but we have only been operating the air forces down here and 2 divisions, and only one of them being motorized divisions. So I'm going to err on the side of caution or over caution and build a few more synthetic factories here to help deal with fuel problems. I don't know. I don't know that this is a good plan, but I want more, especially seeing as we only have one fighter factory. Well, let's look here. Okay, well, code packs. Oh, we still need most of the production. Not much that I want to shift to something else. Well, SS field uniforms. Let's... I don't know if I would have made the choice to have different SS field uniforms than Army field uniforms. Yeah. Oh, what the hell? Okay, we're going to go down to 1 manufacturer field uniforms for the SS. Okay. That's weird. SS uniforms were a bit different than regular Army uniforms. I don't mean just their badges, but actually cut is somewhat different, but not substantially different. And as the war gets stressed, they do dip into Army supplies and use Army manufactured support equipment. Let's see, what does our support equipment look like? The good thing and the bad thing is there's a lot of these things in Black Ice. So I like that there's a lot of variance in it, and because I don't think it's the support equipment is the HQ equipment. But it may be, no, here's support equipment. Okay, we have 4,000, we're making 3+. Okay, we can cut back on production of support support equipment. I don't know how much we need, but I'm going to go down to 3. So that keeps it in production. So we will over time lose our efficiency because we could quickly ramp back up without much difficulty, but it will slowly over time do that. But I think I want to make more other things. Okay, we could do let's do a transport. I don't think we're building any transports. We'll cancel that if we are. No, I just right now I know I'm building obsolete. I just want to build obsolete until we get a better fighter and a better bomber, actually a much better bomber and fighter, and then we'll put those in. These are just to store up a bunch of junk, older stuff, and to partially ramp up efficiency of those factories. Now we'll convert over to that. Field uniforms, okay. Now field uniforms, obviously, because I think we're replacing a bunch of losses from Spanish Civil War or maybe other things, but regular uniforms we definitely could use more of than SS ones, and I don't think it'll be too terribly hard to ramp that up. I think we could do a few more tanks. So let's come over here. Well, what do, show outdated equipment. Oh God, this is another problem, is the UI has problems with Black Ice. Or maybe everything, no, because it, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because we already, no, they should have still have, because if I want to do a new line, this is a bug. I can't get the rest to display that. Oh, no, there it goes. Okay. Now we're back. That's what I wanted to see. Okay, let's, yeah, I think we don't have any of these medium panzers in production. Let's get just one to start with. No, let's go 2. And I was thinking about adding, oh, I don't, am I, oh, here, okay, let's do more Panzer IIs. What are you guys saying up here? 0 can be found in a 2-liter bottle. Normal coke can only be found or less screws with my ratios when I'm mixing drinks. Building Panzer IVs, yes. No, well, I'm not going to build those stupid heavy vehicles. I'm not going to do that. The new arts. We need more rubber. Okay, well, we're already getting what we can from Belgium. Well, I think for now we'll do French Indochina, which will build up factories in French Indochina. So when that gets taken over by the Japanese, it'll help Japan out. I sort of strategically try to look at things like that. Nope, we're not doing tigers or king tigers in the 1 million thing, but I'm definitely not building these new Bao Fazug. I just sort of call them the new art because they're the new model. There was an earlier 1920s model of heavy tank, the Gross Tractor, if I remember correctly, that they built a handful of to test out illegally. But they called it the Big Tractor because they wanted to hide it from the Allies what it was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no mouse divisions. That's a silly tank. I like driving it in War Thunder, but it's a silly tank. Yeah, list tractor and gross tractor. That's right. Yeah, because they also did a light one too. And there was some controversy in Hearts of Iron 4 development stages of what to call that later thing, because, you know, what is it? And I definitely agreed with their decision, because it is sort of the new model, because there was an earlier existing model. I was just going to build... No, I'm going to build transports. Okay, we're going to build some transports. Well, we may be driving the mouse tomorrow, but tomorrow we may also be doing more grinding up on the heat event tomorrow, so that helping you guys get through some of that stuff. And again, any of you who want to show up tomorrow and play War Thunder, again, War Thunder is free to play, are very welcome to join us. Research bonuses. Quite honestly, I am not absolutely sure. Research bonuses, infantry half tracks. We're looking here. No. Well, there are these for production bonuses. I'm not sure which ones you're talking about right offhand. IKB. Oh, left of Achtung Panzer. Oh, you mean in the national focus tree? Okay. Infantry tactics, land doctrine. Bonus for light carriage, light artillery. Yeah, here the Sonderkraft Fahrzeug, the is it SDKFZ or whatever. That will give you 50% research bonus, if that's what you're talking about there. Yes, that will do so. And there may be other ones. That's 28 days. I think we can speed this up since we're no longer fighting in Spain. That was sort of the reason I slowed it down, so I could handle that. And then for once we really start like invading, even though we will be pausing, invading, you know, France and whatever, we'll probably go down to speed 2. Needing to manage more than just a few. Okay, we will also, just because we still need some, go one more factory of Panzer I's, but I hope over time we will shift our OOBs away from 36th Division once we get a later division type. We'll see about shifting some. Now, let's see about putting two of these into development over there, and I want to have a add unit 2 over on the west. Okay. I really, quite honestly, don't know how much I should rely upon my training of divisions, which I think I should be. Now, this is now 37. Back in 36, I don't think I really should be, because I was mostly just playing catch up with some of these, you know, production needs, and knowing that we were going to have units given by events that needed equipment, so I didn't want to overly start training stuff. Okay, we've been doing a bunch of sort of research things, whatnot, over there. So let's come back over here, and this is where I want to naturally focus, construction equipment, Volksdeutsch, storage building, rubber silo, synthetic rubber. Okay, let me quickly come over here and look at, okay, wood fire engines, fuel storage, fuel refinery, oil plant. Okay, coal liquefaction. Where's rubber? Because we can't currently build synthetic rubber. And historically, by 37, they were well into developing synthetic rubber. Maybe not on a grand industrial scale, but they were doing it. Refueling, crude oil plant, rubber processing. Okay. So that's 39 is when they see the start of the technology. And again, I do know that they were well on their way by this time to doing, you know, research level, but I don't, and this would presumably be industrial level output. I don't know what they were doing with that. So synthetic rubber refinery, well, that would help get that. So let's go down this path here. Thanks, AKB. Yeah, I did find it. Okay, that was what? These machines improve factory equipment. Well, let's come over here and start doing some of these. Bomber workshops. Let's do artillery. We'll get tank workshops, but right now, and I know I've been adding some tanks to the production queue here, partially because of had been some deficits here, replacing probably losses from the Spanish Civil War. But I also want to, because we are expanding our production of infantry units, which will presumably require more artillery, I wanted to make sure we got some of that going first. I think probably next year, right, on tanks. Okay, military bills run out soon. Okay, yes, 19 days. Thank you for the reminder. Boom, hit that. And we have another factory open up. Okay, I think let's do some Panzer IVs. We'll get another factory in there. Pack Soviet medium above pack guns. Oh yeah, you're talking, maybe I haven't noticed. Oh, here, yeah, probably something out of the Soviet Union, as he's saying, from Spain, I'm guessing. There are, I believe, I know there had been, I say this, some templates with, let's see if we can, okay, we have this, like either just like medium tank or in earlier versions of this, and I don't know if it's just I'm not seeing it yet here or something. There'll be like captured equipment, like tank battalions or something I could add to some units, or would be in some OOBs that would be able to fill, and that might be when oh, where do I come over here? Okay, pause. Like when the check line gets unlocked by controlling check armor design access here, that might unlock a template that allows for quote-unquote captured equipment or something. I don't know. And this would be the ones that we would produce theoretically, and the others would be, you know, captured equipment that we wouldn't have produced but would go into there. I don't know for sure. It's been a while since I played, and of course they're making changes, and so you're getting to watch me learn about this. Okay, we can't do this yet because we have not oil plant. Okay, where's oil plant? Has technology, improved oil plant. They mean this. Okay, coal liquefaction, oil plant, improved oil plant. Okay, so we have to have this, which is a 1930 technology, or 39 technology, I should say, to unlock this. Okay, so we're going to wait till at least 38, so that's only a few months away to get that. There's always so many more national focuses that I want to complete before starting the war. Fortunately, they've cut the time down considerably. Yeah, 28 days. We'll see if we get that. Improve our aircraft production. Our attaché or battle. Well, that is something I was forgetting to do. They will not accept. Was I on the wrong country? Oh, they will accept. Okay, good. Japan will accept. So thanks, we will send that off. So now we can see what's going on. Recently found a picture. Constantly looking for stuff on that. According to the description, they think it was shot in 1939. It was at American training maneuvers. And it has an American general standing in the middle, and a Japanese on one side and a German army officer on the other side observing American training in the U.S. I think this is after Japan is at war with China, but this is, I think, done in 39 before September, so before the World War II's broken out. But they were observing U.S. military maneuvers, the attachés, seeing how it was going. Okay, thanks, AKB. Okay, electronic computing, good. The future, economic future, he must be removed. Economics, yeah, oh, I took the wrong thing too far over. Let's look, yeah, okay, shacked. So, guess we're going to follow the political course, which now opens up economic minister. Don't know if that would just refire the event if I put him back in or not. Alfred Krupp, though. Fritz Todt. Go for Krupp. Synthetics, speed, research, construction, speed, construction, speed. Yeah, probably we'll do Krupp. We already have Goering as a political advisor. And we already have his flunky, Funk. Because he really... Okay, just so you know, he was there, but he was purely Goering's creature. So they should be one and the same, and not any distinction between the two. It's whether, if you don't want to say Goering's in charge and you want to say Walter Funk is in charge, fine, but it's really Goering and his 4-year plan is running the show. So it's Goering in charge, and he's having Funk do the actual work. Goering is not a paperwork kind of guy. So it's Funk is doing Goering's bidding, shall we say. So not that Funk is incompetent or anything, but he's Goering's creature. So it's the same as having Goering in charge. So that there's a distinction between them here is not a real thing. So I would combine the two, quite honestly. Now, that doesn't mean I would give all the benefits exactly of these two and all the negatives. I might cut each of the benefits, and I have to look at them in half and then combine them or something, instead of 5% artillery factory speed construction improvement, give 2.5% and give 5% improvement speed to light aircraft factory, something like that. But I would combine these two into one thing is what they should be. Okay. Well, we can do coal liquefaction here now. And we will go with that. Okay, second complete year starting. Yeah, we will continue this here. I think from quick, and I didn't examine that in detail, but just generally going with it, I think they're overemphasizing the air element of the 4-year plan and its effects. Well, Funk is already there. You have German Aviation Bank. These are both economics ministers. So there's 2 slots for economic ministers. So Funk has already been there, and we had Funk and Schacht, and we've just now added Krupp. So my point is, probably of the high-level peoples in German government, and whether you want to say Schacht is a National Socialist or not, I don't really think he is, but he is definitely a fellow traveler, definitely on the conservative side, nationalistic side of, or I should say nationalistic side, authoritarian side of the German power structure, most assuredly, because he's there before the Nazis come to power. He probably understands economies the best of any of these people. I'm not saying the best person in Germany or anything, because there very well could be other technocrats somewhere, but of the high-ranking people, he understands it the best. Konstantin Harrell, or however you say this, representing the Reich Arbeitsdienst. Okay. For construction speed of those things, that makes a certain amount of sense. Though, definitely as the war goes on, that's really what they do more of. At this time, they're doing a lot of infrastructure work, you know, building literally the Autobahn and working on the Reichsbahn. They're also doing lots of, well, some work actually building factories. A lot of work putting farmland into effective use, and however you want to translate that into game mechanics is another question, whether it's increasing the amount of manpower or whatnot. But that Speer, I've disagreed with the way that Speer has been represented here as primarily as a converting of civilian to military factories. Yes, he does part of that, but I see him continuing Fritz Tote's construction speed element, but I also see him as an efficiency developer, even with current military factories. So not just converting of it. I would have him here, because I have built this at one point, and it still exists, but never released to the public really. A similar, not this same hierarchy, you know, of ministers, but this idea of it, a similar one I built once. But with, you know, similar. Hope everyone's interested in similar bonuses to things like production efficiency base and cap efficiency, looking a little bit more in adding some of output efficiency by having Speer, and I do some of that with Tote as well. Tote is most assuredly a builder, but he's also helping to construct, and I'm glad they have him in the brown uniform, helping to construct factories and things like that as well, not just fortifications. So definitely Speer more on the efficiency than Tote, and I sort of combined my thought of the two because he only comes in after Tote dies. But he inherits, because I look at these people as much as the individual, but as much as that, or even more maybe the organizations they represent. What organization has the real power? Is it, you know, Schack stays on for a long time as continuing heading the Reich Bank. He's no longer economics minister, but he still controls the banking system in Germany. So he still, I don't know when exactly he loses that, but he still controls that for a long time. So he's still a player, but he's no longer the primary player. It shifts to Goering. Goering eventually loses out more or less to Todt. And then once Todt dies, it goes to Speer. And then we can talk about the guy with the Hitler mustache, but not Hitler. Totes, another Todt. I'm forgetting the name. Another Todt flunky, who's trying to push Speer out of stuff. So that's sort of how it goes. But Speer is as much of an armaments organizer and not just converting of factories. So that's how I would do it. Okay, so yes. Now select national focuses. Okay, we could expand Opel military factory. That would be nice. Fuel silos, Hermann Goering Works, establish Volkswagen vehicle factory. Reich Arbeitsdienst, the RAD. Okay, yeah, we'll go with Hermann Goering. Okay, well, let's look. I don't know if there's anything new that we know we need. We're slowly building up heavy artillery. Yeah, let's just throw one more into heavy artillery. Not that we don't need more tanks or something, but we'll just get that going now. National Socialist economics is a complicated issue. Partially because you have Hitler's ideas, but Hitler knows that he's sort of at the top, and he's not going to micromanage. Hitler is not a micromanager. Hitler is not, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, he's not a Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, most presidents in America get briefings on things. And I don't know how they do it today, but in the past, it was a stack of papers, stapled together, and it would have, I don't know, 5 pages, 20 pages, 100 pages, whatever. But there was a cover sheet on it that explains what it is. Whether it's a topic of dealing with steel production in America, or Iran has taken some American hostages. Whatever it is, there's details in the briefing that they get all the time. And I'm not talking about the morning presidential briefing, but they may be handing them over then. But they're documents that are prepared for the president, as well as, the president gets it, but as well as his advisors and cabinet staff that are reading these things. Well, Carter, my understanding, not just read the cover sheet, but he would try to read as much of the document, which, 10 5-page documents, no problem. 10 50-page documents, like a night, a day, He'd try to read all this and try to micromanage this. Now, Carter was something of a nuclear scientist because he was in the Navy, dealt with, he's not like a super genius at it. He dealt with the nuclear, I think, carriers, the nuclear engines. And so he knew how these worked. So like when the 3 Mile Island incident, he flies out, but he's actually well informed on the subject of how to deal with nuclear energy problems, how the engines work and how the things work. So he's not just there as a president concerned about, nothing like Chernobyl, but, a nuclear problem, and we're going to comfort people and make sure that the right people are doing the right job. He's actually there trying to look at it, understand it himself, because he has the background in it. But Carter's a micromanager and reads all these documents, where Reagan, he probably read the first half of the cover page and made the decision on it. So the person writing the cover page for Reagan greatly, and whoever that may be, for whatever it may be, because it's domestic issues are written by, it could be the Department of Agriculture, or the Justice Department if it's a legal issue, or if it's an overseas trade issue, it would be a different thing. Whoever's writing, because it's different people writing the different briefing documents, who's ever writing that cover page, because the person who prepares the report, writes the 10, the 20, the 30 pages, it often is, report, isn't necessary, and he may write a cover page, but somebody else, higher up, the idea of a minister, or, a secretary of energy, or secretary of state, or whatever in America, he himself or one of his immediate assistants very well may be rewriting the cover page based on the document there, but emphasizing certain things, influencing the presidents and how they do things. This happens. Whether they still do it with paper or they do it electronically, I don't know. And some people, supposedly, Obama didn't read it at all. He just got briefed. They would brief him on the stuff, and he would sort of make the decisions. So the briefer is very important. But Reagan would read the cover, fully or partly the cover sheet, depending on his interest on the topic, and make the decision. Do this, do that, do whatever. Yes, no, if they were asking, whatever. So the person writing the cover document is very important. This does sort of happen with Hitler, but Hitler is very much not a micromanager on any of these subjects. He is an appointer of often conflicting departments and people to handle certain things. And this is how, it's nuclear submarines. Thank you. Xinjiang? I don't know. Don't want to be insulting, but so yeah, no, Carter knew his stuff. This is not a slam. I dislike a lot of Carter's policies and principles, but Carter he's, in my opinion, sort of gone off the rails as an older person, but he was a well-meaning president, just not a good president, and he did know his stuff technically, and he was, and again, I think he's a bit befuddled with age, a very smart man. So modern statements of Carter, I discount. He's past it. He's more ideological and feel good now than really looking at real problem solving. But so this is, and obviously not to compare Hitler and Carter, just management styles. Hitler is, a sort of a big picture, will periodically drill down into an issue, but then tell somebody to go do it. He doesn't follow up well on it. He puts departments in charge of things, and often multiple departments in charge of things. So, and that have different goals and they conflict, and he wants that. Hitler wants the conflict and wants to see who's going to come out winning of the conflict. And so German economics isn't a thing. There isn't one book, one thing to read and then say, this is what National Socialist economics are or was. Partially, again, because different people have different ideas, different departments have different ways of doing things. But also you have, Hitler, shortly after getting into power, now I don't want to say the first day or anything, but shortly after getting power, he is preparing, and with the German, the German National Party is agreeing with the idea that Germany should rearm. Now, they don't want a war after rearming or a war because of rearming. They just want to rearm Germany because Germany is super weak. But Hitler's looking towards a war. So he's getting agreements about the rearmament of Germany from some of the other partners. So Hitler's very early on pushing to slowly rearm Germany, or so early on. So there's always this rearmament element. But there's sort of German economics in peacetime and early war. And then German economics after you invade the Soviet Union and oh shit, things don't go well. So people can find either in statements of Hitler or in statements of other high-ranking Nazis, almost anything they want to find in it, and contradictory things. So it's really hard to try to figure out what Hitler really sort of kind of believed versus, because he would often go and tell people things, publicly, that if you look at his private conversations and people that have recorded them, he definitely didn't believe or didn't agree with, but he's just trying to get support from these people. Whether it's factory workers versus factory owners, so you have to sort of sift through it. This is why I'm still trying to understand German economics, or your National Socialist economics. It isn't fascism. It is not the centrally planned economy. Hitler does not want a centrally planned economy. Hitler wants a competing economy, but it's not capitalism. He doesn't want capitalism. He is not a capitalist. He wants a certain amount of market forces. He wants a certain amount of competition going on in the economic field, because Hitler believes competitions make you stronger and better. So he does not want central planning of fascism. So he is not a fascism. Nazism is not just fascism plus racism. It is its own thing. He fools the world, including many in Germany and some outside of Germany, thinking that Nazism is a type of fascism. It is not. It is contrary to fascism. It is different. I'm still trying to dig out just exactly sort of what it means. And so you may be going, well, you're not sure. How can you be sure it wasn't? Well, because we see both his principles in action are different than what we see fascist thinkers want to have. Now, fascism in Italy doesn't live up to the expectations. They don't quite get as much power and control as they want to. So you have to look at both the reality of fascism and the ideology of fascism are in Italy. I'm specifically talking about are different from each other. But now they both believe in a big social welfare state. So they are types of socialist. And I've been having some discussions with some people. Is National Socialism socialism? Well, yes, but it isn't Marxist socialism. It isn't. So if your definition of socialism is only leveling, meaning everybody equal, Marxist, all the means of production owned by the state, If that's the only definition of socialism, then no, it's not socialism. But socialism can have a broader definition, because there is a huge, and especially if you're looking at socialism and not just the ultimate end of communism socialism, the extreme socialism, but if you're looking at, you know, there's a lot of socialism out there. Now, some places you say, like in Sweden, the Socialist Party never socializes the country, to my knowledge, as much as, say, the Labour Party socializes the means of production. I think in Sweden, and I know they do nationalize some major companies in Sweden for a time, but mostly it's capitalism with lots of high regulation and lots of social welfare state in Sweden. That's my understanding of what Sweden sort of is like. Where socialism wants no, I'm not talking communism here, I'm talking socialism, wants the majority of means of production, as well as food production, as well as industry production, owned by the state, where small, like a local bakery or a local newsstand or whatever, or maybe newspapers in general, can be privately owned. And so, because a newspaper might not be seen as a means of production. So you can have, say within socialism, you can have sort of a custom car manufacturer, you know, meaning one-off cars. That can be a small business, privately owned, but that's not the means of production being owned by the state. That is a small business existing under socialism. Where under communism, that's not allowed to really exist. Everything is owned by the state. Now, with National Socialist Germany, all of it is collectively owned by the German people. And this is sort of the ideology. It's everything, whether it's the small business, the small farm, you know, the really small little farm, or a big agricultural farm production, you know, that owns lots of land, or whether it's a Volkswagen factory owned by the government, or an Opel factory owned by maybe a foreign company. Even though it's sort of technically, in a way, owned by a foreign company, it's still technically owned by the German people. It's just they sort of have a rent or a lease on the use of it, and can use that, can sort of own it, shall we say, so long as it benefits the German people collectively. It's a collective, this is why it's partially socialist, is that it is a collectivist ideology with social welfare programs. And so long as the National Socialist Party believes that your asset, again, whether it's a small farm or a big farm or a small, you know, handmade something or a big manufacturing something, so long as it is being used for the benefit, as they see it, for the German people, you can privately own it, and to a certain degree, it can compete with others, meaning there isn't, at least with most things, set price controls. You know, you can charge different prices for things. You can have market competition. Now, you can't employ your people too cheaply, because there's going to be regulation keeping you, because it's for the benefit of the German people. You got to make sure you pay your workers enough. So there's those kind of controls, and so there's a lot of stuff. So you know, like Heinkel eventually, but because at first he's really in favor with the German people, with the German party, the National Socialist Party, and gets an award and whatnot. But eventually his main factory gets nationalized, taken over by the government, and he eventually goes off and starts another sort of aircraft manufacturing capability or design and workshop kind of thing. I don't think it makes lots of aircraft, but it designs aircraft. So as he goes off and does another Heinkel thing, but the main Heinkel factory, because he sort of disagrees with what should be done, gets taken over by the government, and it's nationalized, not just managed and he still owns it. It's nationalized because ultimately it's all owned by the German people, as expressed through the party and state of the German National Socialist Party. So there is this. So this is why it's a type of socialism, because there's all these social welfare programs, because it's all collectively owned through this, even though it may not be directly owned or managed by the government. Hitler wants to keep that competitive thing. And this, to me, is clearly different than what I understand fascism to be. So fascism is different than National Socialism on an economic basis. They're both hyper-nationalistic. They're both collectivist. They're both authoritarian or totalitarian ideologies. They, so they share certain commonalities that people mistake for being the same thing, and some elements are the same thing. Okay, tactical bombers. Just reading quickly. Hitler also pulled a John Kerry Witherspoon before he killed it. After he saw it, yeah. Well, liked it and didn't like it. Okay, I get that. Many of the Nazi Party ideas were rather socialist. I can't remember the name of the document, but their election campaign platform. There was many. Yeah, left-wing ideas. Yes. I do sort of struggle between calling both fascism and National Socialism, whether it's a right-wing ideology or a left-wing ideology. If left-wing must be leveling, meaning everybody equal, if left-wing must be anti-religious, Hitler was anti-Christian, not anti-religious. There's a difference. Fascism generally is mostly it happens in Catholic countries, but is generally pro-religion or pro-Christianity. But but neither of these are leveling, meaning you can Hitler does not, he's a revolutionary. He wants to get rid of the, shall we say, corrupt old elements of the old order. He wants a new order based on merit. So he wants a hierarchical society, but based on merit, where blood will rise to the top, and those that become decadent over the generations will fall back to the bottom. So he doesn't want a fixed titled aristocracy actually ruling. He's sort of okay if you're descended from some ancient person, so you still have that title, fine, but that doesn't give you special rights or whatever. It's just that's your ancestral heritage acknowledged kind of thing. So he's okay with acknowledging titles as a historical legacy, but they're no longer give special privileges within the National Socialist state. But he in fascism acknowledges that. So if left-wing must be leveling, must be anti-religious, I don't know, maybe I could think of a couple others, but I'm not thinking of them right now. If it must be all of that, then no, National Socialism is not left-wing. But it is a revolutionary party. So is it revolutionary right-wingism? Maybe, but that to me sounds, because generally right-wing is conservative or reactionary, which is sort of want to go back to, whether it's to an aristocracy or go back to a constitution that's an older constitution than the current thing. So reactionaries are different than revolutionaries, vehemently so. Hitler and his National Socialists, and it isn't just Ernst Röhm who wants to continue the Brown Revolution, or Joseph Goebbels, who's always something of a bit more left-winger within National Socialism. It isn't just them. It's Hitler himself is a revolutionary. He wants a cultural revolution. Goes back to that Volksgemeinschaft that I was talking about. That is a revolution. It isn't maintaining the old Prussian traditions. Now, because he's, an Austrian because he's sort of on the border between Austria and Germany, sort of an Austrian, Bavarian type cultural German. He isn't trying to reestablish, and now Ernst Röhm is a anti vehemently, even before World War I or because of World War I or something, anti-Prussian. He's an anti-Prussian. So he wants to get rid of the Prussian-dominated army and wants the brown shirts, the SA, to become the new army of Germany, because he's an anti-Prussian German. Hitler isn't so anti-Prussian, but Hitler is not trying to restore or maintain Prussianism as that, or trying to maintain, the different cultural uniqueness of Germany. He's trying to smooth that all out, trying to create a unified German culture, if you will. So he is a revolutionary. He is not a counter-revolutionary. So generally, and in most of the ways you would describe right and left, National Socialism as a left-wing ideology. Most ways. Again, Hitler is we can talk, and I've talked in other episodes and of the other series about Hitler's religion. But Hitler is not a Christian, even though he pretends at times. He does believe in a higher power. He, especially as time goes on, because of his narrow misses with assassination, and especially before, with the Munich crisis and taking Austria, he believes that this higher power, whatever you want to call it, is guiding his journey to greatness and restoring the German people. So he believes he's being protected and guided by a higher power. But he is not a Christian. So a god of some sort, of some description, is guiding Hitler and this thing. So he believes that there is maybe even multiple higher powers. The God of the Jews versus, and this is part of why he's anti-Christian, is because he sees Christianity as a corruption. Hey, thanks for following the channel. He sees Christianity as sort of a Jewish corruption of German culture. And so he doesn't want to go after German Christians. He just wants them to die off and have new Germans raised through the Hitler Youth as anti-Christians, and creating, not trying to go back to, he's neither does he believe in Odin and Thor and those exact Norse or the German versions of the old gods either. He's not personifying him in that either. He's not a neo-paganist in that sense, but maybe something of a paganist, but not really trying to recreate that either. He's trying to, this sort of influenced by monotheism of Christianity, but he sees it, he wants a god of struggle and a god of strife, and not a god of peace. And so, and there may be, a Jewish god, and there may be a German god, and there may be multiple gods. I don't quite know if he ever nails, and this is a whole nother, we were talking enough about Hitler and his economic policy, Hitler and his religion, that's another thing hard to nail down. And I don't know that, and these are, you can get some of this from his table talks, people going home after having dinner, with Hitler and amongst, because he often ate amongst like 6 or 8 or 12 people. And he would talk during it, sort of like I'm doing now to you, and give lectures on things. And he would do these kind of things, and people would go home in their diaries and write, immediately after it. And so people are trying to distill out of these things. And I don't know that he had a fixed opinion about religion, but he definitely believed, like I say, in a higher power, definitely believed that there's stuff going on. And sometimes, in which I will, in talks like this, hypothesize about things. Hello, Neutral. And so you see, so mere fact that he's hypothesizing about something doesn't necessarily mean he believes it. So it's sort of murky and hard to get out, and I don't think we'll ever get a solid answer on it. But he definitely believes in a religious element to life. And so does that communist, atheist, socialist types want to put fascism and Nazism into the right wing, partially because it's just the thing that they're fighting against, and they want to give it a bad name, but it's really much more socialistic than a lot they want to acknowledge. And tell me why Hitler was so successful invading France, and the Central Powers didn't have over Germany. Hitler was not successful invading France. Von Manstein comes up with a great plan, and Guderian and a few others have a really great plan, and we'll talk more about that when we get to invading things. But it's they not Hitler, but the generals, the Panzer generals, execute a war of maneuver and decision, defeating an enemy who was trying to fight a war of attrition and static defense, France. And so they outmaneuver him. Yeah, I think it's a war of maneuver they successfully executed. The Schlieffen Plan was a war of maneuver and decision, but the technology slash terrain, meaning they had railways, and Schlieffen was dependent on a railway. But once those railways ended, and they sort of knew that they ended, they couldn't come all the way across Belgium and then through France, all through the railways. Once they ended the railways, they're starting to march again, so they're not moving that fast. And France, with its centralized rail network, is able to shift forces enough. So without the motorization, and France does use the famous sort of taxi cabs from Paris, and then later on you see London buses shipped to France to move mostly British troops around. They have an internal lines of communication that they're able to counter a war of maneuver, stall it out, and create a war of attrition. France is trying to fight a war of attrition in 1940. Germany, because of motorization, are able to maintain it as a war of maneuver and decision by maneuver. And they defeat the larger, supposedly superior army by outmaneuvering it. I mean, it's just sort of simplistic like that without describing the exact tactics, and that's just, there's two ways of war: attrition or maneuver. And if you can't outmaneuver your enemies fast enough, quickly enough, it becomes a war of attrition. And then you look at production, production capabilities, manpower strengths, and just not making too many mistakes decide who wins. Well, that was in World War One. They weren't wearing the red at the beginning of World War One. By the end of World War One, they were in green, and in World War Two, they were entirely in green, the French. Well, I think at this point we're going to end this here. I want to thank you so much for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. You can follow me over on Twitch and we have a lot of talks in between episodes and things, so you can join in with that. I love your input. So see you next time for more Hearts of Iron.